Welcome to Bluecoat. My name is Bryan Biggs, Director of Cultural Legacies. I'm not going to say a great joke, so I'm going to... Is this working? Yes?
Oh, it's working.
I'm going to hand over to somebody else to introduce the evening, but just to say thanks for coming. And I know all of you have been to the Biennial, I'm sure you have, but if you haven't, make sure that by Sunday you've seen everything, because there's lots of great stuff tucked away a bit. You don't see everything, but do make sure, because it's a fantastic Biennial this year. But I want to really congratulate Sam, who's with me here. Sam Lackey, who's Director of Biennial, who's going to say a few words of introduction to this evening. Sam, over to you.
Hi everybody. Hi, I'm Sam Lackey. For those of you I haven't met already, I'm the Director of Liverpool Biennial, and I'm really happy to be here to introduce this event, Tracing the Biennial, which connects to the beautiful exhibition and display of material and photographs from previous biennials, which is, I've lost my bearings, just out there. Honestly, it's been a long 14 weeks. It's been great, but it's been long. As I'm sure you all know, and I'm sure many of you know many of them, but we have an amazing panel here today, all of whom are absolutely, more than integral. The Biennial wouldn't exist without the people who are sitting here today. So it feels like a really incredible opportunity for me to learn more about what made the Biennial, the beginnings of the Biennial that's led to where we are today. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank Bluecoat for all their support for Umoja. Some of you will know that we actually launched Umoja here, and we also had our almost closing party last weekend here and events. And I know that for our curator, Kanisile, who arrived back in South Africa today, so that's why she's not here, but this was an incredibly important place for her as part of the story she was telling with Umoja. And Umoja, The Sacred Return of Lost Things, is about tracing a line from catastrophes of the past towards aliveness and new futures. And hopefully some of you will have seen some of the Biennial and seen how that's manifested in our exhibitions. But Bluecoat seems such an important space for Kanisile, partly because of its incredible history here and how that's been connected with and thought about in biennials for years and years. And also, of course, about the kind of future and the forward thinking that Bluecoat's always done as well. So being able to have our events here and to mark the beginning and the end of our biennial here was really, really important. I can't quite recall what else I was going to say, but I would just echo Bryan to say we've got 4 days left of this Liverpool Biennial. I would urge you all, if you haven't made it to all the venues, to come and see those venues that you may have missed. Victoria Art Gallery is particularly amazing up on the hill. I will be around every single day for the last 4 days, so you'll also see me around as well. But please do come and visit us. We're going to do a kind of handover for the next round of introductions. So it's my pleasure to hand you over to Gabby. She's a former biennial colleague. She's a researcher on biennials as well. And she's also a very special friend of this biennial, Umoja. She has supported us in so many different ways for this biennial. So thank you to Gabby, and just over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sam. Thank you everyone for coming and giving your time for us today. And I think this is a very interesting meeting. And if you don't know, it's a very, very special meeting as well too, because it's a rare moment to have all these people, I think, united together to think and reflect about the biennial. That it's making like 25 years next year, so it's quite interesting. We are really looking to celebrations here. So my name is Gabriela. I'm just chairing today. I'm a PhD researcher, as Sam told you. So I'm just going to pass to each one of our panelists today. They're going to introduce themselves, just give a little bit of the background of involvement with the Liverpool Biennial, the beginnings of the Biennial, and what happened. The first person I'm going to pass was Lois Biggs.
Oh, thank you.
It's just because you're into the top of my list. It's okay.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm Lois Biggs, and it's great to see you all here tonight. Thank you for coming. Bryan and other people will correct me, but in my memory, I was asking James Moores for a lot of money in the mid-90s because we were rebuilding the Tate, and James thought about it for a long time and said in the end that he wouldn't give the Tate money because the Tate can look after itself, but he would love to do something else for Liverpool. And then we had a great party in 1997, that was the decade of parties, when New Contemporaries and the John Moores Painting Prize Biennial opened at the same time, and the artists from both of those exhibitions all sat down together in the town hall and had a great meal paid for by James. And the evening was such a success in James's view that he said, we have to have a biennial, because a biennial is a party. So that's how the idea of the biennial came about. Thank you, James. And he also paid for the first one in 1999. But is that...
Yeah.
How long should I go on?
Right now.
I think that's okay. You can continue telling the
Well, we're going to talk about the origins in a minute.
Okay. So since then I've gone on to do other biennials in other places. So I've done Folkestone Triennial 3 times, and I've done Land Art Mongolia, and I've done Aichi Triennale in Nagoya in Japan. So I'm still, well, I've very recently stopped doing biennials and triennials, but I think they are a wonderful. It's so good that Liverpool not only has one, but has the best one in the country. Well, in Europe, sorry. In the world.
That's great.
Thank you so much, Lewis. Thank you so much. So I want to introduce you to Jonathan Swain. Jonathan.
Hello, I'm Jonathan. I had left Liverpool. I lived in Liverpool for 12, 15 years, and I just left Liverpool. And of course, the first thing happened when you leave, someone asks you, do you want to come back and I'll give you some money? Because the whole of the time I was in Liverpool, I didn't seem to have a penny, and I was always desperately trying to find money and trying to produce work and produce stuff, and it was a real frustration. I worked on Brookside at the start of, Letter to Brezhnev, the feature film, and then I'd also done exhibitions at the Bluecoat, the Open Eye, and we'd organised raves, and the weirdest part is you can have blues parties. We also did a lot of dance, and we became visual stress, and we were doing performances in the centre of Liverpool that were just provoking people. We weren't getting money, and they were exciting, and there was a lot of people involved, and it was really good.
Thank you so much. I think we can share the microphones. Yeah, it's okay. I think I can use this one. We can make different ones. So next person that I'm going to introduce is Laurie Peake. Yes.
Where to start? I can only start by the image of Lewis and I in a dusty garret at the back of Tate Millbank when there was only one Tate. I mean, literally, we were in an attic room, weren't we? In a derelict hospital behind Tate Millbank, yeah. Setting up Tate Liverpool. And we came... Oh, has it gone off?
Yes.
We came up to Liverpool, and we had to stay in really awful hotels for a while, didn't we? While we set up. The Moat House. No, I think that the Adelphi would have been an adventure, but no, just the dull Moat House. And I think what my memory is of what really struck me, and it was one reason why I took the opportunity to come and work in Liverpool, was just the sheer excitement of the art scene here. That really, took me by surprise. Actually, it wasn't what I was expecting. I don't think it was what any of us were expecting, and so looking back now, I just think that it was kind of the biennial had to happen, didn't it? And those of us who were at the Tate looked longingly over the dock at what was happening at the Bluecoat and everywhere else, and thinking, that's where it's really happening, And anyway, fast forward, lots of other kind of jobs later. I was working for Allsop Architects on the ill-fated Fourth Grace project when North West Development Agency pulled the plug on it, and I was suddenly out of work, and I thought, great, I'm going to review my career. I'm not going to go straight into another job. This was on like the Saturday morning actually, and I think on the Tuesday morning I got a call from Lewis saying, "What are you doing? Are you twiddling your thumbs? You know, we've got lots of things happening here that need your contacts in the city," because I was working on all the planning permissions, etc., and all with all the contractors, so I thought, okay, well that I'll do that, yeah. And
I'm sure we went through due process.
We did, of course, yeah. I mean, but it didn't give me a full-time job, and then I finally got one, and then anyway, 10 years later, I was still there. Yeah.
That's great.
Thank you so much. Anna, I want to introduce yourself, Lois, please.
Hi, I'm Lois Keidan. I'm really sorry I'm not there in person. I would love, I'd much rather be there than here, but I'm at home in London. So I'm Lois Keidan. I was born and bred in Liverpool. I'm a Scouser to my core. And so I was really thrilled when Bryan Biggs, one of the many Biggses involved in the Liverpool Biennial, invited the organisation that I'd founded and was the director of until 2021, the Live Art Development Agency, if we wanted to partner with Bluecoat on a live programme for the Biennial in 2002. And we had the pleasure of working on live programmes for the Biennial in 2002, 2004, 2006 and 2008. But also, sort of before that, the Live Art Development Agency, we used to be based in Truman's Brewery in Brick Lane in London. And I remember one day, Jane Casey, Mike Carney, and I'm pretty sure you, Jonathan. Yeah, you came into the office and you were down in London, you were talking about a biennial, you were planning to do stuff up on the first floor of St John's Precinct in the closed bit. Yeah. And we had lots of conversations about that. But Jane particularly said that she was down in London because James Moore was, A Foundation, was buying a school just up the road from where we were. And he wanted to get on, it was at the height of the YBAs, and he wanted to turn it into a studio space, rent it out to London artists for a lot of money, and then take that money back to Liverpool and put it into the Biennial.
Can I add to that a bit?
That never happened, but we did move into Rochelle School.
Can I add to that? Because one of the things was, the intention of that was to have a Liverpool embassy in London, and it would provide some sort of centre to develop and push Liverpool and Liverpool art.
Yeah, well, that didn't happen, but he did buy Rochelle School, and I remember phoning Jane Casey to say, could we go and have a look at the school? And she said, yeah, come on up and have a look. And somebody said to me, Jane Casey never answers her phone, so I managed to get the one answer. And we went to Rochelle School, and then we moved in there for about 20 or so years. But we were still at Truman's Brewery when we did the first biennial, which also was a collaboration with Tate as well. We'll talk about that in a bit. But just to sort of echo what Laurie was saying as well, this struck me that Liverpool was one of the few cities that could host a biennial because everybody there worked together. Everybody respects everybody else and collaborates. Which is very kind of almost kind of unique in the UK, where most places people are in sort of fierce competition with each other, and yet people are collaborating on something so vast would be inconceivable. But Liverpool just do it. It was really spirit for us to go up.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Lois. So, last person to introduce himself is Bryan.
And I'm not related to Lewis, so let's dispel that. People thought there was a mafia that ran the art scene in Liverpool. But, I mean, just to add to what everyone said, I'm not sure how it came about, but I was asked to be on the sort of steering group which became a board of what became the Liverpool Biennial by James Moores. And Jane Casey was mentioned there, who had worked here actually as our programmer. She was on it, and there were several other people. I think, Lewis, you were on it as well, weren't you? So, and we didn't really know what was to expect, except that
Jane Rankin-Reed.
Jane Rankin-Reed, indeed.
That's pre-Crim, it was pre-Crim, wasn't it?
No, it was after Crim.
Was it? Okay.
Okay. Well, 1998, I think we were asked to come into a room to discuss this idea, and James sort of said, "Here's £1 million, do a biennial, but I want it in the next year," which is not easy to do, and that's why the first year Tony Bond was brought in, who was a very experienced biennial curator from Australia, and he did the first one, and Lewis joined for the ones after that. But I do want to say a bit about the context very quickly, because I know we can move on. But and I know John Brady's in the audience, and John Brady ran a wonderful festival called Vision Fest that lasted several years in the run-up to the biennial. And on reflection, I do think that was so important. It sort of prepared the ground for to say, here's a city with a lot of empty space, with a lot of energy, with a lot of artists, and we can do something really special. As you said, Laurie, it was an energetic city for just doing things. And as Jonathan said, they were doing raves in unused buildings and so on. So it was right. I'm going to read what John Brady says. He says, though not on the same scale and with fewer resources, Vision Fest was also the largest UK cultural event in 93, 94, 95, based on the head count of participating artists. And it wasn't just Liverpool artists, it was artists from all over would come here. In founding Vision Fest, I had no desire to curate existing exhibition venues, but focused on peripheral, street and outsider locations as new pathways for artists to work and engage a broader audience. Rather than paying transport for existing artworks to be brought here, I established an alternative practice by inviting artists to participate as temporary city residents, creating artworks in situ responsive to their experience as visitor or interlocutor. The practice was always the modus operandi for the formative editions of the Liverpool Biennial. And there's a lot of truth in that. And it wasn't just that. There was things like Art Transparent, which had happened before. It was sort of a collaboration across the whole of the north, including Liverpool, of course. And Lewis was very involved in that. And I think those two things together sort of showed the way. And the fact that this bloke called Eddie Berg had set up the crazy video operation, and it was very, very successful. It became Moviola, then it became Fact. And I think those three things together perhaps prepared the ground for the biennial. So I was involved from the very beginning and still am. That's it.
That's brilliant that you Lois started to tell a bit of the story of this gathering, and you were saying this is biennial as a party. But who made the decision? Let's make it. Let's make this happen. Let's make the biennial. Let's start the thing. Who did it? How this started in your heads and between you?
This is between you two.
It was James. I mean, it was James. I mean, he had the money, but he also had the vision. He had the contacts in the sense that he'd grown up with the YBAs and he wanted to see their work here. And
And he had a breadth of vision. James had a breadth of vision. He's fantastic.
And
he's a real good energy person.
But I think James is an artist, and I think that's really, really important that in its DNA, Liverpool Biennial knows that it was set up by an artist. Maybe a very particular, wealthy artist, but nevertheless, it's on the side of artists. I mean, that's how it started, and I think that's still visible in it.
One thing that you just told us about, Bryan, about the Vision Festival before and everything, and this kind of answers my question in the back of my head a little bit about this idea of the Liverpool Biennial. Since the very beginning, think about commissioning artists and this process of commissioning projects rather than to bring things and just show it up. how this concept comes around. I know that money it plays around a lot of things, but how this is started is really from this project that it comes in here.
Well, I think it's right in saying, Lois, that the first one was not commissioned. So Tony Bond basically got his address book out and got some really good work by artists that he knew. I think that's true, isn't it? Yes. And it was only really when Lewis took over, I think you can say more about this, but that's when the principle became, we want to commission new work. And I think that idea of, like John says in his sort of statement there, inviting artists into the city just to see what they could do. And that was always the exciting thing, because you never knew what was going to happen. And you took risks, and sometimes they didn't work, but most times they did. Was that true, that it was all commissioned work, wasn't it, more or less?
Yes. I mean, you can see this in the simplest sense that Tony's show, I think, had 75 artists in, something like that, a lot of artists. The second biennial in 2002 had, I think, 26 artists, and each artist's project was a commission, or almost all of them were a commission, and some of them were quite large and visible. And I think this is the moment to talk about the kind of board review that took place between the first and second. Because the board, or proto board, or whatever that Bryan mentioned, Bryan and Jen Rankin-Reed and James and myself, and I don't know whether Jane Casey was on the board or not, but anyway, we evaluated what we had gone through with Tony Bond. And when you're working with a curator like Tony, who's very experienced, he had all his own systems, he knew all the artists that he invited, and many of the artists didn't actually come to Liverpool because they trusted him, Tony, to look after their work and place it somewhere good. And so there was a really hands-off sense in which I at the Tate, Bryan at the Bluecoat, whatever, felt that the artists arrived in the gallery, or our works, I should say, arrived in the gallery, but we had no contact with the artist. We didn't really know how to interpret the work. I mean, everything was through Tony Bond. And Tony is great. I mean, he did a fantastic job. It was a very good show. But we just felt that this was not about Liverpool. And James, in particular, felt if he's going to spend millions of pounds on making the art environment in Liverpool better, this was not the way he wanted it to go. And this was the point at which we radically revised that traditional way of doing a biennial and decided we were going to do many fewer artists, commission them, because the point of a commission is that it has to be specific to the place that you're commissioning for. And so it forces the artist to engage with the public, or at least the place, but preferably the place and the public. So that was one thing. We also decided that we didn't want an international, quotes, curator. I mean, all the curators who worked in Liverpool were international already, so we didn't need to bring one in from outside. We had the experience. I mean, I remember James being extremely provocative about this. He said, what makes you think that the talent that you have in Liverpool is any worse than the talent that you can find in Paris or Sydney, I mean, you have talent in this city, the curators. And the organisations, I think also this, because Tony was the single focal point in the 1999 biennial, we wanted a much more collegiate way of working, and so for the second one we set up something which was, we set up. I remember Tony had a curatorium, didn't he, where he invited everybody who was curatorially involved, but it happened kind of twice or three times. But for 2022 we tried to develop the whole thing through conversations among the curators who were in Liverpool. And I think, as several people have mentioned earlier, there is a kind of collegiate way of working, or we developed a collegiate way of working between different organisations in Liverpool, which allowed each organisation to shine at what it does best. But through contributing and participating in something that's really conceived as a joint enterprise. Can I go on? I mean, the other thing which worked really well the first time was Jonathan's bit, the so-called independence. I can't remember when we called it the independence, but
We didn't call it the independent.
until later it was called Tracy.
Yeah, it was called Tracy, in a response to Anthony Bond's Trace,
yeah.
because we just thought we've got to call what we're doing, and we're a group of artists, mainly from Liverpool, and we'd found, and James was willing to give us a little bit of cash each, and that was really fantastic for all of us. It was just like £500 or something like that to actually produce the piece of work, whether it be a bit of music, whether it be a dance, whether it be an art piece, whether it be a film, whether it be something, a tattoo. And my job was to go and find the buildings, and I had a brilliant person, Jonathan Butters, and he went in and made buildings that were wrecks, and now they're palaces, and were wrecks, made them dry, and made the doorway, and we said, look, there, you can have this, and you can put your work in there, as long as you invigilate it, and as long as you open on time. I was very insistent on opening on time, because if you're going to advertise something, open when you should. So that happened. Why was it called Tracy? Because personally, Trace is a really naff title for anything, but putting a Y on the end, we could use their publicity, and just by going around putting Y's on the end, and so we were usurping what Bryan and his mates were doing, and so that was quite important to us, and it gave us, it was exciting to do that, and it was daring, and it worked, and we grabbed quite a lot of the publicity away from the Tate and onto Liverpool.
That was the point. That was certainly the point in James's mind. I mean, part of this board review that went on was to absolutely fix the idea that this was a festival. This was not a single exhibition. This is a festival. It was the John Moores Painting Prize, a biennial exhibition that happened every 2 years since 1957. There was the international show, which is what Tony Bond did. There was the independent show, which is what Jonathan did. And then there were various other platforms that emerged, all of which were equally valid as part of the biennial festival. And that notion of festival with different platforms, which everyone can join in different ways or different places, and the audience can decide which bits it wants to go to. It doesn't need to do all of it. It can choose which bits of the festival it gets involved with. And that notion of inclusivity and diversity was really, really important to James and to the board in those. And so that's how we tried to fix it and develop it as a series of. Well, I think we had 5 platforms basically, didn't we?
New Contemporaries came in later, didn't
New Contemporaries, yes.
On a practical level, one of the important things was to show Liverpool people, Liverpool building owners, shop owners, that this is what a biennial is, and what is it? And this we were providing an example of something that, so the next time it was going to be done, it was going to be easier. And people would know, oh, it's the biennial, yeah. And whereas before, it was like very risk-averse and very, oh, I don't know about that. And so they had to be persuaded. And
Jane Casey used to tell a great story how the opening night of the first biennial, she took a group of councillors. She managed to get them into a minivan and drove them around in the evening, and they were looking out the window and they were just amazed to see so many people on the street. And they got out at one point, and Mike Story, who was the leader of the council, got out, and the first person he met on the sidewalk was his hairdresser. And Jane says that the scales fell from his eyes. He suddenly realised what a biennial was. If it could bring his hairdresser onto the street, then it was working.
Yes.
And Mike became a great supporter.
Can I just ask, Lois, if you want, maybe you should come in and talk about, it was an umbrella, and live art wasn't initially on the agenda, although there were live art performances in, I think in, wherever we did the first off-site, where was it, with Tony Bond's Exchange Flags, wasn't it? But when you came in, did you feel that it was part of the official biennial, or actually we could be a bit more subversive?
Well, a bit of both actually, because one of the reasons it sort of happened, or possibly not one of the reasons it happened, but what happened, was that we were at the time we were working with Guillermo Gomez Peña, the Mexican American artist, on a project that was going to be taking place at Tate Modern in 2003. And Lewis, you'd also commissioned Guillermo's work for the biennial for 2002 video work, which was at Tate.
Yes, Bryan. Yeah.
And so Bryan, Lewis, you had, and then so Bryan proposed that we sort of did a program around that, and so we did a live work with Guillermo at Bluecoat, which was the sort of precursor of the Tate project, and then built another sort of wider live program around that was really looking at sort of the question of international, really, what it means to be international, what it means to be sort of local and international. So it was about, I don't know, you said there was something like 26 artists. I think half of them are in our live program. I think there's about 10 or 12.
I think they're additional. They're in addition to the 20.
Yeah, and that was a program at Bluecoat, at Lime Street, various kind of sites around it. But I just wanted to say, just Lewis, what you were talking about, that sort of moment with the councillor meeting their hairdressers. The thing that I really remember from 2002, and I hope it was in 2002, it's not my memory completely screwed, was the I can't remember the name of the artist, the Japanese artist who did created the hotel room around the Statue of Victoria, which was just the most sensational piece. But it was just that thing that completely sort of everybody got it. It was, just to see the crowd and to see how people were sort of so excited and amused by that work. It was a real kind of like, this is really working. The people of Liverpool are really rising to this. And all of the work that we presented that year kind of got great audiences. It just got great crowds, and they loved it. Really.
My one was seeing Gelatin in that thing, and they were fantastic. They'd done a piece of work in the first one, which was, actually I can demonstrate, 2 mattresses coming together, and you were snuggled in, and it was like it crushed you until he told it to stop, and then it released you, which was literally just one of the best pieces of work ever. It was don't talk about immersive art until you've done that. And but they did for the next biennial, they did a rave in one of the Seal Street or Parr Street buildings, and that was fantastic. And it was just this. It just went on, and it was filthy, it was dirty, it was using old mattresses they found in the streets. It was fantastic. The music was fantastic, and all around there was queues to get in it, and it was like late at night. And I remember going out and looking and asking Mike, what's going on? He said, the people are trying to get into something. And Damien Hirst and who's the guy for White Cube? Jay Joplin. We're trying to arrived in a cab, and we're trying to get in, privileged, and the mic and all the bouncers were telling them to get at the back of the queue, and which they did, all praise. And so that was, I love Gelatin.
Those are like turning on around moments and engagement with the city somehow. I think there is one important thing in the middle of this loads of amazing, incredible things, is this constitution of how Liverpool Biennial somehow helps this change into the city as well, into the city of Liverpool to become what's today. But it's like looking into these derelict spaces and looking into these spaces that should be something rather than just abandoned.
You've got a lot to say about that, haven't you? I would have thought.
Yes, I think that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it helped it become itself, you know, because arriving in Liverpool in the mid-80s, you know, it was every kind of caricature you'd see on TV and the news. And I remember that, you know, when we started at Tate, Liverpool, and first of all, I lived in Birkenhead because we were working all hours God sends and living in this grotty hotel, and I just went outside Tate, looked over the river, and the first housing settlement I saw was Birkenhead. So I got on a ferry, walked around, saw a house for rent, lived there, and used to get the ferry to work. And it was when the ferry was going bankrupt. No wonder, because nobody asked you to pay for a ticket, and you'd get a bacon butty and a cup of tea slammed in your hand as you got on. And I could never get to work miserable. It was such a bloody laugh. It was like having a party every morning, you know. And it's a cliche, isn't it? Total cliche, the spirit of Liverpool, and just the sheer bloody mindedness of Liverpool to survive Thatcher and the 80s, but always, you know, what was thrown back in its face was its chippiness, you know, and actually, I think that the energy, that concentration of art activity brought to it helped challenge that energy that was often conceived as chippiness, you know, from outside, and it articulated itself through that creativity, and I definitely believe that the biennial helped make that manifest. Yeah.
I agree. I was going to say as well. Also, I think the Manchester International Festival started, you know, because of the biennial. You know, it's like, hold on a second, you know, Liverpool's getting all the attention, and that's why they started Manchester International Festival.
Also, the Urban Splash are behind the Manchester one. Urban Splash were in Liverpool. Urban Splash were doing Concert Square and Tea Factory. So that, no wonder it's like the biennial.
It wishes.
It wishes, yeah.
That was something different.
You're going to say something,
That's
Bryan?
not what it was, no, actually.
Yeah, on the top of it. Yeah, because
I just wanted to sort of, because I realised I didn't really answer Brian's question, which was so that it never, I mean, so often, particularly within sort of biennials or within the visual arts context, the sort of the live element performance can often be the sort of the sort of sideshow, the fringe, the opening event, and I just never felt that with the biennial. I always kind of felt that sort of live work was absolutely sort of integral to the thinking and to the experience of the biennial. I mean, it's just great to see it continuing to this day, and I'm just devastated that I missed Albert Koza's performance, which I hear was sensational.
Yes.
Just while we're on kind of context, I want to say something about we were very careful to call it Liverpool Biennial of Contemporary Art to begin with, and this was partly the experience of opening Tate, which you know, Tate opened in '88. The year after, Tate London had opened the Turner Wing, the Claw Wing. And the Claw Wing had a huge amount of publicity, with the result that everybody in the country thought that the brand Tate was about Turner and Constable. And so all the time when we were, the first few years that we were trying to run Tate Liverpool as a museum of modern and contemporary art, people were coming and saying, where are the Turners and Constables? because they thought that's what Tate was. And so, and it's hard to reimagine, but actually, you know, before 2008 and everything that happened in the noughts, Liverpool was very backward-looking in many ways. You know, the councillors and so on knew about heritage. They thought that heritage was the big thing about Liverpool, and that they would sacrifice everything to heritage. And I didn't realise how important what we were doing was until we had a local entrepreneur, whose name I forget, trainers.
Wade Smith.
Wade Smith, David Wade Smith. He actually knocked on the door of the trainer when we were in our first office, and said, "You guys are doing a fantastic thing. There's a young generation who would like to stay in Liverpool, but they can't because it's about heritage. You know, where is the what is happening in Liverpool that calls itself contemporary or looks out to a contemporary world beyond Liverpool?" And there was, you know, there may have been lots of things, but they were invisible. Nothing was visible. And so the first and second biennials, by calling themselves contemporary art, biennial of contemporary art, really helped to shift something and move people towards looking outward and looking to the contemporary rather than looking backwards all the time. and of course, I mean, I might as well slip it in now that the 2002 biennial happened while the judges for 2008 were coming to see whether Liverpool was up for it or not, and I'm told that it was that the European Capital Culture judges only had confidence that Liverpool was able to deliver because they had seen Liverpool Biennial delivering as an international festival. There was nothing else. Well, Bryan can tell me.
There wasn't much else. But the reason that, I mean, people have said, why was it 1999 then 2002? That's 3 years. And that was so we could get into the cycle of the even years, because we were applying for Capital of Culture at that time. And if we'd got it, we would have had a biennial in 2021. In 2007, which wouldn't have worked.
There was a second very important reason, Bryan, which I think, which was that James Moores, you know, was extremely committed to John Moore's Painting Prize biennial exhibition. The Walker closed for refurbishment in 2001, so it was impossible to do, in James's mind, it was impossible to do a biennial without the John Moore's Painting Prize, and consequently we moved the biennial to fit in with the John Moore's Painting Prize in 2002.
I thought it was just money.
It was money as well.
Was money as well?
No, it was the need to frankly, we had a mess on our hands after the first biennial. There was a lot of we had to redig the foundations, as it were.
Yeah, I remember I was at the Arts Council North West then, in a little dingy office at the corner of Slater Street and Duke Street with Neil. We were reading. We had to read the evaluation and give our predictions on it. And it was scary reading at times. But I just wanted to add just one more point about the city and its people and how they're absolutely one of the most important kind of curators and shapers of it. Because of how they embraced the deliberately challenging work that we were putting in front of them, and the obvious, and you can't call it anything but icon, is Superland Banana, and I remember the front page of the Echo.
Arts Transpennine.
Was it Arts Transpennine? Yeah. I remember the front of the Echo, and there was uproar, but actually everybody very quickly grew to love it, and it's that same spirit that I was talking about before. I don't think there are many cities that would have embraced it, and actually they loved that the challenge and the controversy of it, because it was another 2 fingers up to the rest of the art establishment in the rest of the country.
Another example, that would be the Yoko Ono, wouldn't it, Lewis, which was 2004. I don't know if anybody in this audience was here on Friday, but I gave a talk about Yoko's relationship to Liverpool and Bluecoat, and in 2004 she did these banners, which Lewis knew exactly what she was going to do, and went to see the head of the council, Mike Story, and said, I'm going to do this, and you need to back me up, because Liverpool had applied for Capital of Culture, and we couldn't be seen to be backing away or censoring an artist like Yoko Ono. I mean, it was a very controversial piece, wasn't it?
Do you want to describe it?
I can describe it. It was a banner of a woman's breast and a woman's pubic hair, very large on banners, one of which was on St Luke's Church, the bombed-out church. And some people got very aerated about it. I don't think there was quite the storm I thought there was going to be. There was a march by Muslims, I believe, and then there was a lot of letters to the press and a few snide comments in the press. But really, I mean, Mike backed you up, didn't it?
Liverpool Echo said it had more correspondence about that incident than anything else in its entire history, including football.
So it was a lot worse than I thought.
No, and I had death threats. Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh my God,
Probably with
really?
David and Bryan.
I mean, Liverpool was, there was a rough side to Liverpool still. And yes, I had death threats. And but Mike Story, who was the leader of the council, was he was also a headmaster, and he said, "This is brilliant. It is unearthing the racism, the bigotry, the xenophobia of Liverpool, which has to be done before we are European Capital of Culture. You cannot be European Capital of Culture and still be xenophobic, racist, and bigoted." Yeah, big. I think, all those things. And so to bring all of that out in the open and have it, as it were, a bit of bloodletting was probably a good idea.
But Lois, we'd done those sorts of things with the You Are Here. I mean, Guillermo's performance was extraordinary, wasn't it?
There was quite a lot of bloodletting in You Are Here. Yeah, there was the Keira Riley black wall drawing piece that she did in the piece in the space in Hanover Street. But the best blood was, I think there's a slide, it's certainly in the exhibition, there's an image, and I presume it's on the slideshow up there, of Mad for Real, J.D. and Kai Juan, a Chinese artist who did a piece called Soy Sauce and Ketchup Fight, which they the courtyard of the Bluecoat in a sort of perspex box, and it's literally, it's a kind of east-west thing, but they have a fight with soy sauce, and one of them's got soy sauce and one's got ketchup, and they have a fight with it, but they use glass bottles. Do you remember that, Bryan?
Yeah.
They used glass bottles.
And they also didn't tell us, but halfway through they took their clothes off.
Yeah.
So we had these two naked artists covered in sauce in our front corner on a Saturday afternoon with a lot of people.
They weren't completely naked. They weren't.
They were completely naked. I got the photographs. And one fell over and cut his knee really badly, but you couldn't tell if it was blood or sauce or what it was. So we had to abandon it.
The ambulance
called an ambulance,
This is tomato ketchup, where you're like, no, underneath it, tomato ketchup is actually real blood.
Yeah. Couldn't do it now. Don't think we could.
Yes, this is something I was going to ask somehow, because there is one thing that also Lewis told us earlier, like, well, we wanted to do something that's more local, like this connection in between the people, not bring someone from outside, and have also this connection. And one thing is the description of this event, of the soy sauce ketchup fight. Loads of things wouldn't be possible today in it, of things that you were doing at the time, because you were testing grounds of loads of things. And also, I think there is lots of protocols nowadays we have to pass through of health and safety and things like that weren't clear really before. On the other hand, was Lewis saying before about this collective work and curatorialship process together this is something nowadays that I'm looking to the academic side of it. I'm as a researcher as well too. There's lots of people trying to conceive how people do work together in a collaboration process, and people just did it before. They didn't.
Yeah.
You were not asking yourselves like how, what methodology should you practice? We're just doing, isn't it?
We talk to each other.
But Laurie, when you did a lot of work with the the origins of the community-based stuff, and that was sort of taking those risks as well, wasn't it? I mean, it wasn't as confrontational as what we just described there, but perhaps talk a bit about that.
The first neighbourhood that I got to know really well was on Scotland Road, the Rotunda College, and but it when we were at Tate, and I, because a lot of our invigilators at Tate, we interviewed hundreds because we put an advert out and we got hundreds, I mean if not thousands, of applications because of the massively, staggeringly high unemployment, and so a lot of ex-doc workers, we were interviewing a lot of ex-doc workers, and obviously we could only give so many jobs, but I reached out to the ones who hadn't got jobs and said, well, you seemed really interested in art, what can we do? You can work with the Tate, but in a personal capacity, I suppose. And a large amount of them came from the Scotty Road, and they invited me to the Rotunda, and we did contemporary art courses there. I used to go once a week, and we'd sit around and talk about contemporary art, and it was amazing. And that grew and grew, and so that was that kind of long-term relationship, and there were many across the city, but the Rotunda particularly, that really took root there, and they were really up for doing ambitious and innovative stuff, and being challenged by bringing artists in who would challenge them and challenge, as you say, their attitudes. There was a lot of bigotry, and I think, again, going back to the corny phrase of the spirit of the people, but it was, it was so palpable that you could just, if you brought, they could invite an artist that they wanted to work with and create stuff themselves. And I don't know if that was being done anywhere else. I certainly hadn't found it at that time anywhere else. And they carved their own, they curated their own, they carved their own, whatever commissioning programme. And it came from every one of them, and across generations, and everybody fed into that, and in terms of the capital culture, that also fed in, I think, to the judges' decision. They said, and it sounds glib. Oh well, we were so impressed by the community involvement, but it was real, and I think that genuinely impress them, because those communities who were supposedly uneducated and poor and all those things could speak so confidently about contemporary art that would frighten many other communities and societies outside Liverpool. And again, the cliches of the cab drivers who were, who could give the best guided tour of contemporary art and challenge any, art world glitterati coming up, getting off at Lime Street.
Yes, yeah. Yes, that's true. That's what I was trying to say too about this. I have some questions around, because we didn't want to make it chronologically, but somehow we are naturally doing it chronologically, so this doesn't. It's in a sense. I want to understand, because you're talking about this kind of big shifts into the process, which do you consider somehow, I think capital of culture is a big moment or shift for Liverpool Biennial itself to just not conquer a fate somehow, but further on when it really happens. Because I was reading through, there's like 7 programs happening at the same time, with connected to the biennial, this umbrella process that you were saying earlier, Bryan. Is it true? Was 7 things happening at the same time under the Liverpool Biennial umbrella?
Sure they will. Yeah.
Yeah, Laurie, do you want to?
Well, there was things happening, not just this festival period, but there was year-round projects, like some of the...
Well, I mean, that's good timing, actually, because we've got
the Grammar Lane, yeah.
Another place on
Which
on
was the biennial
screen.
project, but you were asked to deliver it, basically.
Yeah, because other...
We were not asked to deliver it.
No, we weren't asked to deliver that.
Laurie was asked to deliver it.
Well, but I think because because obviously, ironically, another place became one of the poster boys of the capital of culture, and they had that fabulous big stretch of image of it at Euston Station above the platform and screen things. But of course it's not in Liverpool. It's in Sefton. Yeah. But Sefton had approached us because Capital of Culture was coming up, and they wanted a piece of the action, basically. But also all these places, these outlying places, saw what culture, for want of a better word, could do for a place. And Liverpool, like it or not, I think is a living embodiment of cultural regeneration and what it can do to a city. But I do really believe that is because of the people and because of the foundation, the bedrock that was there, that kind of anarchy that we talked about, that being up for a challenge. And so Liverpool, I believe, it's my favourite city in the UK because it developed slowly because it was poor, but it developed in such an interesting way because every other year we had these amazing artists actually, using the fabric of the city as their fabric. They sculpted it, they painted on it, with the people, really importantly, with the people. And that's what's created it. And year on year, some of them then became some of semi-permanent. And then, that Lewis always said, let's not do permanent artwork, because it's such a bloody nightmare to get it to maintain, but also to get planning permission and etc. So let's say it's temporary, and then let's test it with the people, and if it's embraced, then let's see if it could be semi-permanent. And
even with the Gormless in there, they were temporary.
And I was going to say, so the another place is the arch example of that. And it wasn't cynical. We didn't do it because we knew we were going to make it permanent, because Anthony had only lent it to us for 6 months. But he'd lent it to us for 18, was it? I thought when I was saying 6 months, I thought, bloody hell, all that work for 6 months. And we didn't do it cynically. We didn't think, we'll get it permanent, because it was meant to be going to wherever, wasn't it, afterwards. But it was such a raging success. That first weekend when it was launched, the burger seller and the ice cream van made more in that weekend than they'd done for the whole of the previous summer, and because of all the planning permissions and stuff that we had to go through, it it was a Trojan horse, and so they had all the objections were, well, there are no toilets at the beach. I said, well, actually there are, but they've just been locked up for years. So we found regeneration funding in Sefton, working with a wonderful man, Rod, whose name I can't remember, to get regeneration money to refurbish the toilets. It's not safe. There aren't enough lifeguards. Again, another pot of money to get more lifeguards. And so it went on. So by the time we launched it, that beach was cleaner, safer, and had better facilities than it had. And of course, when we launched, it was prepared for that huge surge of thousands of people we got that summer. And you've got capital of culture on the horizon. And of course, Sefton are saying, there is no way we want this to be taken out. So then we had to embark upon another world of pain to make it permanent. But working with amazing people, and this is, to me, the beauty of these big projects. It's not the big shebang, It's everybody it involves, because it involves armies. It's like, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it takes an army of people to create good, meaningful public art in a place. And so, from in every walk of life, they were all helping to make that permanent and get over the huge obstacles, not least, obviously, the money for Sefton Council to buy it, which is a whole other really interesting story, I think. I've lost my thread, but the fact is that it is so much more than just the success of the physical object. Yeah,
definitely.
I need to put in just a bit of administrative background as well, because I mean, European Capital Council was an extraordinary opportunity, and the European commissioners wanted it to be a city region, not just the city. They paid quite a lot of attention to what happens in the city region rather than just in Liverpool. And that was why we were able to do in Sefton and Gianna Prensa in St Helens, and in down at Speak we had what was his name from
Michael Trainer.
So and there was money, but actually the money was intended for publicity, and I think this is a really important thing actually, is that we decided very early on in the history of the Biennials to not buy a lot of publicity, but to use what money we could raise for marketing purposes to commission art, because actually art is better publicity than using marketing. If you can get editorial from fantastic artworks, then that's the best possible way of spending the money. And Northwest Development Agency, because in those days we had development agencies with money for marketing, they understood that and agreed to do it. They agreed to us doing it, and they realized. I mean, we weren't pulling the wool over anyone's eyes. No. They saw what we were doing and they really liked it.
What I was going to ask too is to John about the reflection to the artists into these two, because 2008 we are talking about already 9 years ago of having this independent project in parallel to the biennial as well too. What is this reflection into an artist's culture, I would say? So
I think one of the important things is almost the other people that come to Liverpool to see stuff, and the discussion that goes down at 4 a.m. in a bar there, and I think that's one of the joyous things about it, and one of the things I always feel as I was encouraging people to come up and see it and stick around for the weekend, stick around for the week, just enjoy yourself and chat with your mate, with all the people who have been producing stuff, and they can show them the stuff. It's like an ongoing crit, and it's a really lovely thing.
And in that context, scale is really important. The just sheer volume of stuff happening, and to put it all under one umbrella makes people feel comfortable. They can move around under that umbrella and see a bit of that and see a bit of that, and they don't have to see everything, but there's bound to be something for everybody in that way.
And also, one of the things was, at the time, this is 2000, very much the Arts Council was very much about commercial galleries moving to the regions out of London, and we'll do this. And the Biennial just showed that wasn't a practical thing. I mean, it isn't practical, but energy and adrenaline is practical, and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I want to ask if someone in the public would like to ask us something to this group of people in this moment, because it's a very specific moment and it's very rare that we have all this gathering. Some people are part of the story somehow too, isn't there? So,
there's a few there. They're hiding, I think.
Yeah. Does someone want?
I have a comment.
A comment, just a second. I'll come because we have recordings. Just let me give you a quick.
As a participant in the Vision Fests and the Tracy and the Independents for many years as a local artist, I think that the benefit to the community of artists and creative people in the city is magnificent, because we all get to see what everyone else is doing. And it actually motivated me to make a new piece for every independent. Just, it's kind of like, I'll do a thing. I haven't done for a while, but it's a good thing. I think it's been a good thing for local artists.
I think, Nia, it's really important. Actually, the COVID period made me feel very lonely, and it made me realise how important knowing what other people were doing and seeing other people. And I felt that the Biennial, all the Biennials have done that, and the Independents have. And I think I remember the first Biennial, I always have a tune at the back of things, and my tune was The Streets of London, terrible naff, Ralph McTell, and which I've never heard or listened to since, but it always made me think, the lonely people, where do they all come from? And it's like, yeah, it feels like I felt, before the Biennial, I needed to break the spell of loneliness, and I think it's to know that there's other artists out there, to know there's other people making things, and to be able to show them to each other is brilliant. And I think you're right, Nina.
Can we ask a question of the audience?
Go on.
Because I just really like, because we know a lot of the people in the audience who know the story better than we do, and whether you have a different take on it, and whether you think, is there a memory that we've missed? Looking at you, Neil and John.
Both don't mind.
No, it's two now. It's two.
Yeah, it's scary.
Don't want you to come on.
Oh wait, I'll make Louise see you two just a second.
Oh,
Go on, John.
Thanks, that's really sweet, Tom.
You lead.
Yeah? Yeah.
So I was instrumental in the Vision Fest of the earlier part of the 90s, and this is all really positive and fabulous.
But I can hear it.
But there's also, when we were talking earlier, you were talking earlier about bigotry and them and us and stuff like that. What you're reporting back is really positive experiences from artists, and I had those experiences as well. But there's also a kind of residual veteran artist in Liverpool who's never been really very successful, and is a self-declared artist, and they very often said, why are you giving all that money to those foreign artists? Don't I have a special position because I'm native? and there has been a lot of kind of antagonism there, certainly. When I first started Vision Fest, what was actually happening was the Arts Council was closing down its Liverpool office and re-headquartering in Manchester, and there was a lot of anxiety about that. And I actually held public meetings for artists in the Everyman Theatre, and there were 300, 400 artists attending every night. And there was that division between people like Jonathan, who are positive and opportunistic, but there are those other people who just say, it's mine, I deserve it. And I think there's always been a bit of a tension there, but maybe that creates more creativity even, having some conflict. But I just, not being negative, but there's such great positive stories here, but there is still people who think that they're qualified for it simply by being here, and that's not enough. Being here is great, but you've got to be positive, hardworking, and talented. Oh, Neil.
Yeah, but he
what was the question? That was really good, John. What was the question?
Well, have you got anything to add that we've not touched upon?
No. I
remember you being in that office in that Gotti office when we were both at Arts Council, and we had to read this quite punishing report about the biennial. Not punishing in terms of the excellence of the quality of the art and etc., but just the worries of our Arts Council superiors thinking this lot. We can't let this lot in charge. We can't leave this lot in charge.
I think you probably read it, Laurie. I probably skimmed it. I think that's as was my way, or as is my way. I mean, for me, it was the reminiscing about Mike's story and seeing him in Parr Street, in one of the empty buildings on Parr Street, and he's just wandering around and mixing with the what felt like the hoi polloi, or the kind of very common in certain circumstances. I know I was the kind of the normal people. It just seemed really odd seeing him there. That I remember specific things. So I remember the wonderful chemistry set that a couple of artists brought over to the Parr Street show, and it was every night it was more cocktails. That was possibly the most fantastic thing that the Liverpool Biennial ever did for the city.
And can I just add another thing? Is one thing I learned is you don't serve wine at openings. What you do is serve vodka, gin, and treat wine as like expensive, and so people are just knocking drinks back, and it's just like the whole experience is tons better.
It has to be said, and it was kind of talking to John earlier when we were in the bar. It was kind of it was that kind of bringing people together. People do come together over a drink, and you brought the artists together. It makes them a little bit easier to chat to at times. John.
Just reinforcing what was said earlier, in doing what I did, my approach was not ideological or critical. I just suddenly found, wow, look how much it costs to pay people to transport artifacts and put them inside art galleries, and the artists somehow can be really peripheral to that. And so what I decided to do was not pay for big artifacts to be transported to the interior galleries. I decided to be on the periphery and in the street and invite artists to come here. So what was being exposed to the audience was the artist and the process, as opposed to the dealer and the artifact kind of thing.
Yeah, it's amazing because it kind of makes sets the tone for what happens to Liverpool Biennial further on. John, this is quite incredible in the sense. I'm just changing the video here for Lois.
I just wanted to, just on that sort of like other ways of doing things that just seems to be sort of inherent in the Biennial's DNA, and probably in Liverpool's DNA really. I didn't experience it, so it's apocryphal to me, and Jonathan can probably tell me if I'm completely making it up. But James decided to do a conference, yeah? Was that part of the biennial? So a foundation decided to do a conference. And James's thinking was all the most interesting conversations at conferences happen in hotel rooms afterwards. So he decided to sort of like cut out the middlemen and just do it in just do it in rooms in the Adelphi Hotel. Is that right?
We hired a whole floor.
We hired a whole floor of the Adelphi for one weekend. It was brilliant. And it really, the discussion wasn't about the people that were there. It was also about the other people that were in the Adelphi. And I said, we can't tell what's going to happen because we don't know who the other guests are. And the other guests were supreme. They were a bridal group and a war veterans group. So we had this two mix them and us. And it was really it was fantastic, I'm telling you. And I said to Jane, and I said to James Moores, I said, well, actually, we're not going to see the benefits of this. They were going, oh, you should write something about it, Jonathan, you should write something about it. I was going, I don't know what's going to happen. I think the benefits won't be known for another 20 years. So it's another couple of years till we find out what. I've got a question for Lewis. One of the things about the Tracy exhibitions was the first thing that happened was this person, Gerd Rowling, turned up asking. I got phone calls from him, and Gerd Rowling was from Germany, and he'd done the Liverpool Biennial in Berlin. 2 years in 1995, and all the biennial group were like, we don't want him here. We don't want him here. That's going to really mess up our whole story. And so the first thing I did on my first day of Tracy was I phoned Gert and I said, you come in, mate. And he turned up, and it was brilliant. And I've still on my desk at home, I've got this very big industrial ring which he gave me at the end of the biennial, and everybody comes in and goes, "Wow, what is that, Jonathan?" I don't know. I said, "This guy, Gerd Rowling, gave it to me at the end of the biennial," and he was here almost the whole of the time of the first biennial. He was such a good character and really quirky and beautiful moustache.
So what was the question?
Did it happen?
It really happened. This is not a hallucination. It really happened.
Did you go to the first biennial, the Liverpool Biennial in Berlin?
No, I didn't. I missed it.
So
I think the publicity wasn't very good.
Do you know why he did it?
He did it because he thought, well, you may remember a different story.
Yeah.
The story I remember is he did it because he thought there was nowhere more unlikely in the world than Liverpool to do a biennial. And this was before Berlin Biennial happened. I mean, this is kind of the background to Berlin Biennial being done.
Possibly, you have to ask Gabriela about it.
You can see Gerd, he's online. You can look at his site.
That's amazing. That's a brilliant story. I'm really sorry, but we have kind of wrap up in a couple of minutes. Yes, of course.
To ask people what their favourite ever biennial work was.
Definitely. Please, yes. Would you like to tell us which is a favourite biennial artwork? I can come around and just do this, yeah? Just pass this company with the microphone, yes. Thank you, that's
I think this is more in relation to the conversation that's been going on the other side. Home baked was huge for the city. I mean, it's still to this day holding up the legacy of Liverpool and what the Liverpool Biennial stands for, bringing in an artist, but ultimately taking over council-owned street, buying it up and giving it back to the community. So when we're talking about where money's going and how it's being spent, we need to acknowledge the fact that it's about economy and the circular economy that is happening and what art does bring. So for me, that was really important.
We didn't manage to reach it actually somehow. Yeah, because of the time we stopped.
Yeah.
In
There's a few in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Does someone else want to tell us about another artwork? Some hands? Yes. Help me through with the microphone. Thank you. It's just because you're recording.
Half my interest is going into the buildings you wouldn't normally get into. So half of it is, the art's interesting, but actually getting into some of the buildings is fantastic. And I hope there's still buildings in the future one can...
And can I suggest something about that? One of the things to do when you go into an empty building, a disused building or a crumbly building,
When you go into an empty building or an old warehouse or whatever, the thing is, what the trick I learned was don't deal with the electrics that are already there, which perhaps have been there for 50, 60, 70 years. Isolate that and put theatre lighting in, which is independent of the actual mains, and it works wonders.
That's a amazing tip. That's a really
Can I
good
just
tip.
ask, are there any particular buildings you remember over the years going into?
It's just been on the screen in the old blind school where you suddenly looked up at a falling down mural in a cupola, and I didn't know that was there.
That was by Mike Jones, son of Jack Jones, the great trade union leader.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, yeah. But in terms of building, I mean, the Copper's Hill, the sorting office, post office, that was fun. I mean, what an opportunity just to go in there, and then it's gone. I mean, so that I think was a great achievement to show us that. But for my favourite piece, can I say my? Well, I've got lots of, and I want to echo what Lois said, and she might disagree, but the Guillermo Gomez Pena La Pocha Nostra piece here in our performance space on the opening of the 2002, was it? It was called Eccentrics. And what was great, obviously he's a very seasoned performance artist and brought two of his members with him from California. And they were quite extreme in just the performance they did. But they also recruited a sort of local crew of performance artists, including Mandy Romero and other people. And I think that was great sort of development of local artists in that you couldn't get much better than performing with him. And just to end that story, we did it for 2 nights. On the second night, we looked out the window and there was another performance happening outside the Athenaeum by a Liverpool group who had a flamethrower. I'm not joking. And they were like, got this flamethrower going up the side of the Athenaeum. I thought, oh shit. And our trees nearly got scorched. And Guillermo said, that was heavy, man. Were you here for that, Lois? Do you remember?
I do remember. Now you mention it, I do remember.
And we thought that someone had stolen the fake gun. Do you remember?
Yeah.
And which looked like a real gun. And we thought, oh God, someone's walking around Liverpool with a gun. Jonathan, do you remember who that was?
No, sorry. But,
they were all off their heads on
ketamine,
fun. Apparently, but there you go.
Mine is Ryan Trakart in the basement of Rapid. Partly because I spent a lot of my life in Rapid Hardware, and 2, it was about, I don't know how long it was, but I seemed to go there every day and watch this video for a couple of hours. It was fantastic, and it was just, I don't know which bit it was. It was the bedding department of Rapid, but it was, and that made me happy.
And you, Lois, and you, Lewis, I'm just like, okay.
I have so many, but the 2 come to mind very quickly. One was the Rigo 23's lion, caged lions outside St George's Hall, which is pretty amazing.
And people were bringing them cat food.
and the pub.
How's the cat food?
And the pub opposite printed the T-shirt saying "Free St George's 4."
They should have been made permanent. I mean, it was so easy, wasn't it? Just put it so easy. Just put in a cage around them. But absolutely, that should still be there.
And then Dohosu's.
That's been up on the screen, the pavilion. Yeah. Are those
That was the
buildings
same
still
year
there?
Pollard and Forsyth did Silent Sound, wasn't it, I think?
Oh yeah.
In St George's Hall, which was a sort of
Hall.
recreation of a famous seance that had happened in that space, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's beautiful.
That was a hot ticket.
Can I?
Yes,
I mean,
of course.
This is totally random that just popped into my head, but I think it just demonstrates the kind of intimacy that some of these works had with the place, and so the Teresa Margolis pavement of glass pavement in. And is that still there? That walkway between Duke Street? I don't think it is, between Duke Street and Wolstenholme Square. And so such a beautiful piece in this really dingy alleyway. And Teresa Margolis is a Mexican artist from Mexico City, and she gathers glass from murder sites, very violent murder sites that don't generally are the symptom of gang violence, in drive-bys, car shootings that produce all this glass, which is actually very beautiful. And she paved this alleyway in glass, and just suddenly made this very dingy place very poetic. And what was very tragic about that was that a year or two later, a student, a very young student, was stabbed to death in that alleyway. But I thought it was so resonant, because the kinds of violence, drug-related violence that she was experiencing in Mexico City, was a stark reminder that we have it here too. Sorry, that was a downer.
And on that cheery note, I think this is, we are going to wrap, and I'm really sorry we didn't, did talk about it chronologically a little bit, and it reached up to 2008, so we didn't go to 2010 and talk about, John Van Heswick coming around, starting the process of Two Up, Two Down, and then which is going to be Home Bake, and which I think kind of changes and rethinks about the circular economic into Liverpool with enterprises like Squash Nutrition, Kitty's Laundrette, and so many others coming through around afterwards, of course. I just want to mention that it's been a pleasure to be here and hearing these stories up to 2008 with you guys. I love to have another round for the second part of it, which is probably the other years afterwards, because I think it's brilliant to understand this progress and story too, of course, and also how this afterwards also reverberates into the works you are putting onto the British Textile Biennial, into Folkestone and other biennials in other places, because definitely it does. Because it's you take these elements and you bring with you, you imagine into other places and to your other works as well too. Well, unfortunately, we don't have time. We are closing down. So thank you so very much for everyone coming, all the panelists present today. Thank you so much for your presence. Even that you're there in your house, Lois, thank you so much for your presence as well too. It's beautiful, and thank you so much for being generous to share with us little bits of this story and this shared story, and the things that we are missing, because we are missing lots of things in the middle, and that we are never going to know, and that's beautiful. Thank you so much for that, really. Thank you.
I'm not going to say any closing words, but just thanks again, and thanks Sam for your introduction. Good luck with the last 4 days. Do get out there and see those things you may not have seen, because it is a brilliant biennial this year. And thanks all for coming. Thanks to our funders, of course, the Arts Council and Liverpool City Council, without whom we would not be able to do these events. So thank you very much.